Wow, yes boys, yes, we are back and we are doing 9 Inch Nails, boys. Not 10, not 12, not even fucking 8, 9 Inch Nails. This also happens to be the 9th studio album from 9 Inch Nails, and yeah, I mean, this band needs no introduction. They're fucking pioneers of industrial rock, and they've made some classics in the genre and for music moreover. This record, Bad Witch, however, unlike some of his more sprawling albums, comes in hot at just over half an hour, having originally been listed as an EP and co-produced by Atticus Ross, which shouldn't be a surprise at this point given how well the two men have demonstrated their chemistry in the past on The Social Network and the last EP for 9 Inch Nails. But as Trent himself has said, streaming platforms like Spotify lists EPs as singles, and so the exposure is just not comparable to releasing this as a standalone album. As a result, this album does feel skeletal and not very expansive compositionally at times like an EP, no more apparent than the closer Over and Out, which very much includes some Depeche Mode and David Bowie influence, most especially in the flawed delivery of "Time is running out, time is running out." It's actually very similar to Black Star now that I think about it. Hey guys, hey guys! Yet even for that refrain looping over itself with familiar resonant mumblings, basslines, and industrial tittering textures, otherwise coloring the foundation, it remains to be so effective as a song and closer. Which really does speak volumes to Trent and Atticus's talent for compositionally harvesting the best yield out of the simplest of motifs. This is just as apparent on the opener Shit Mirror, which almost feels like a surfer punk song encased in shrapnel and cheese graters. The vox is so buried, grainy, and wrenched with distortion. By the end of the song, it's carved out its own delectable niche, whilst the riffs and tempo here keep to that noise punk threading. Then there's Play the Goddamn Part, whose song title seems to have been thought up by Charles Mingus or something like that, and that is further reinforced by the saxophones that croon over this delicious double bass belly as though for the purpose of rallying together elephants having existential crises. The flow of this track and how the layers coalesce and depart is so fluid and meditative in its own way. It makes this song one of the highlights on the album, and not just for that texture of the dusty sax. And yeah, those same saxes are then furthered in the next track here, God Break Down the Door, which features as an accompaniment some almost David Bowie low or Black Star-esque vocals, reinforcing the undercurrents of kraut rock and the more avant-garde soundscapes of the 70s and 80s. The beat reeling underneath, however, follows ahead of ourselves to a T with its breakstep, tempo, and contagion of burbling, bubbling synths looping and making it not too dissimilar from some pioneers of electronic from the 90s. In fact, the beat on this song does almost remind me of DJ Shadow's Mashin' on the Highway, with the palette being not too dissimilar from anything out of the Private Press's opaque, garagey aesthetic. And speaking of influences, I would be very tempted to attribute some Radiohead to a few motifs here, whether that be the individual synth or bass lines or even the saxes sounding straight out of the national anthem. I'm Not From This World, by comparison to the other tracks, is a much flatter atmospheric piece to every track already described, though it still serves a purpose in being a much more cerebral, darker soundscape to lose yourself in. The textures feel very cinematic and as industrial as ever, flowing from one passage and motif to another like trains made out of corrugated warehouses. This track though is easily the worst on the album though, as it just gets lost in its own dim, indeterminate nothingness, especially by the end, which could well be the intent. In any case, there is still so much fluid transitional movement and coherence featured in that song and every other on this album, and just how the textures complement each other. It is one of the main strengths of this record, the congealing of the experimental sounds into enjoyable and fresh compositions that don't overstay their welcome, barring maybe the atmospheric track and maybe the drawn out nature of Over and Out. It is without some absolutely spellbinding climactic power and vibrancy, however, which does maim it from being a standalone highlight in 9 Inch Nails' discography, but nonetheless, it is still a superbly executed piece of avant-garde industrial fucking noise, house, krautrock, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And the bass elements are also consistently fantastic. The beats as well are deceptively incredibly fascinating and complex despite how rudimentary they might first appear. But yeah, I think Trent missed a trick here by not having more vocal refrains or vocal lines, because just the looping of time is running out and God break down the door, you know, it's just a bit one-dimensional. So yeah, that's my take. I'll give this a 3.7 out of 5. Pretty decent, you know, pretty fucking decent. Doesn't really feel like an album, however. It does really feel like an EP, but still a great album. So yeah, I'll just catch you later. I appreciate new subscribers, likes, feedback, which shows all helps the channel grow. You know how it fucking is, boys. Yes, boys, yes! I'll just catch you later. Just have a good one, alright? Just, wow! Wow! Woo!